Hey guys, it's JP. My funding company is set to do over 100K a month, and I believe within the next 90 days we should be, if we keep at the same pace, close to 250K a month. So I just wanted to make this video to share the top three things that I believe were the main moving factors in 2025 that put us in a position to have a business that can even do 250K a month within 2026. And the number one thing I believe that put us in this position is we only started taking sales calls if someone had a 740 plus credit score. Now, if you look all over Facebook and pretty much anyone who has a funding company or trying to get someone funding, they usually have their minimum requirement at 680 plus or 700 plus. And in the beginning of 2025 and in 2024, we were no different. We had it that if you had a 700 plus credit score, we could get you access to X amount of capital. But what was happening in the beginning of 2025 is we had a bunch of calls that were coming on the calendar, but none of them were really in a position where we could immediately onboard them and then get them funding quick. And I remember I was listening to Alex Hormozy a long time ago, and he pretty much said that within any company he owns, he likes to get someone a result within 24 to 48 hours of them joining, just so they can see that you know what you're talking about and they can see the value. And a lot of times that will motivate them to stay with you for the long term. And not being able to bring someone on immediately and get them that result was a little annoying, because a lot of times I would outsource to a credit repair partner. And I'm not saying credit repair companies don't work. It's just the ones that I personally had worked with in the past, they didn't really do what they said they were going to do. They would take a very long time if they even got it done at all. So it felt like I was taking a bunch of calls that weren't actually leading to any revenue. It was just sending them to a credit repair company, and then they were just getting kind of lost down the line. So in this time, and at that point, I'd probably reviewed 1,000 credit reports whenever we were taking these sales calls. And I pretty much found that if someone has clean credit, they have enough personal credit cards to be able to get business capital, they normally were not at a 700 or a 720. They were above a 740. If someone had pristine credit and they were in a spot to get funding immediately, they weren't going to be at a 700 or a 720. If someone was below 740, that generally was an indicator that there was something wrong on their credit that needed to be fixed before they would be in a position to get funding. Well, I'm not a credit repair company. I own a funding company. We were just solely doing funding. So I decided, you know what, let's test this. I already knew that by testing this, we were going to get far less calls. But the goal was that if we added enough friction in the process and disqualified everyone who was below a 740, then that means all of the calls that we'd be taking would be with people who'd be qualified enough to go through funding immediately, and we'd be able to get them a lot of capital really quick and make them happy. And thankfully, this is exactly what happened. So as soon as we started implementing this, I started making my qualification process a lot tighter. So if they did not meet every single requirement, it just kicked them out. And call volume probably dipped by 60 to 70%, I would say. But the difference is every single person, almost every single person, I'm not going to say everyone, if they did not lie on the application and they were honest and made it all the way through, that was a call that could be closed, or a client that could be closed. And normally that turned into a deal for us, and we would be able to get them funding in around 4 hours or less. Now, before, when we would bring someone on that was maybe at a 680 or 700 and they needed a bunch of work before they'd be in a position to get funded, that might take 20, 25 hours to fulfill on our promise to that client. When we only worked with 740 plus people, credit businesses, we would get them funding in usually around 4 to 5 hours, with most of the time it being closer to 4 hours. So our service became so much more valuable because we could get it done so quickly, but it's because they were so ready to move. And again, I mean, when you do this, like for instance, when we were running ads, when this company that I was working with basically said I was crazy because my qualifications were just too high. They're like, well, your cost per call is going to go through the roof. And I was like, I know it is, but we need to do this. Like, it needs to be higher. And that's exactly what happened. I would say that our cost per call was about 2 to 3x what everyone else were. Like, I was seeing people in the industry booking calls through ads for $100 to maybe $150 to get someone on the calendar. It was sometimes as expensive as $450 to get someone on the calendar for us. But the difference is every single person who made it on our calendar was in a position to get funding super quickly. So the number one thing I would say that moved us in the right direction was being okay with getting rid of that or letting that 60 to 70% go to only focus on the 30% that could move immediately and we could get a lot of funding for. Because, my offer has always been I'll get them 100K guaranteed. And I just hated drawing that process out 6 months. So then I would say that was the number one thing. Number two, which this is a huge one, and there's a lot to unpack here, so bear with me. But we stopped dealing with cold lead sources and only dealt with hot lead sources. Now, here's what I mean. In 2025, we tried every form of marketing for the funding company. We tried cold call, cold email, meta ads, YouTube ads, referrals, content, you name it, we tried it. I wanted to try every single marketing source to see what worked best for a funding company. Obviously, all of them work, but I wanted to find the one that I enjoyed the most because there's nothing worse than, working with a client that isn't exactly a good fit for the company. The main thing for me is I wanted to make sure that me and my team had people we loved working with every single day. And that's when I really dove into this. And what I pretty much found was the best clients come from three main lead sources, at least for us. Again, disclaimer, I'm just talking about our results in our company, fundwithcredit.com. So if people came from referrals, if we met them at a personal event, so went to some type of event in Miami or wherever around the country, and if they came from YouTube, they were awesome to deal with. Absolutely awesome, because if they came from referrals, an in-person event, or YouTube, they knew so much about us prior to booking that call that when they got on the phone, they really, really, really wanted to work with us. When we were doing all the other lead sources, so ads, the cold, outbound, everything, the problem you deal with there's a multitude of problems, but a lot of times the problem is that they just simply don't know you, and trust is at an all-time low. With cold outbound, that they might just be getting an email from me, and then from the email, they're hopping on the phone. They're hopping on a phone call. They don't know who I am. They don't know where I'm located. They don't know my results. So there's just such little trust in the air. It's really hard to move those people through the sales process. It's really hard to qualify them. And like I said, they don't really view us as the authority because they just met me. They don't know who I am or who fundwithcredit.com is. Now with ads is a different story. You can 100% turn that around. I know a ton of funding companies that crush it with ads. The problem I dealt with ads was I was finding a lot of people were just price shopping, and they weren't really looking at, it was just how good of a deal could they get on the funding, not so much like what is the funding going to do for their business. And that's not the person I like to deal with. I like to work with an established business who has a vision for their company, and the funding is going to be fuel for their vision that they have. When you're working with someone like that, they're awesome to work with because they're in their own lane. I found from ads, a lot of people were just price shopping. They would lie on the application just to get through, and they were not in a position to actually get capital. But it all comes back to the same thing, and it's when people come from these warm lead sources like referrals, events, or YouTube, they've just spent so much time with you that they also view you as the authority, number one. So they're going to listen to everything you have to say. They're not going to, with cold and with ads, I was finding people would sometimes try to bully and tell me how we were going to fund their account. Where with these other lead sources, you don't really get that. They view you as the authority, and they've spent so much time with you where they've either met you in person or been watching your long form content. They just trust you so much, and they feel like they know you. And it basically feels like you're working with a friend. So the good thing about that too is when you come from these other lead sources, sorry, by the way, this video is very jumbled. I'm just trying to gather all my thoughts here. When people come from like cold lead sources, like cold ads or cold outbound, they just close also at a very low rate. So you have to have a lot of salespeople, and you have to have a lot of availability in your calendar because you have a lot of filtering to do on the calls. And even if someone is a good fit from a credit report standpoint and a company standpoint, they just may not trust you. So you have to take such a higher volume of calls. Now, just to give you an example, with cold outbound or ads, for us to hit about 20 clients a month, it takes around 100 phone calls at least a month, at the bare minimum, maybe even more, like 120. With YouTube, to hit 20 clients a month honestly takes 30 to 40 calls. So 3 times less calls to get the same exact result. So whenever I'm just comparing apples to apples for our business, this is why I went back to YouTube. If you look at my credit YouTube channel or my funding YouTube channel, you will see that I stopped making content for a while and then I started making it again. And that's because in that little middle area, I was testing all of these different lead sources to see what made the most sense. Now, full disclaimer here, I 100% am going to start running ads again real soon, probably within the next 30 days. And the reason I'm going to do that is because ads are a phenomenal way to scale. You can reach new people at just a high velocity. If you want to reach new people, you just spend more money. So I 100% am going to start running ads again. The difference is I'm going to have a better filtration system. So when people come through and they book a call, before we actually get on that call together, they are then going to be redirected to content. So they can watch my YouTube channel, they can see who we are, what we do, our results, and then we can kind of emulate that YouTube feel at scale. So I am going to start running ads again for the company because I think it's going to be pretty crucial for us to get to that 250K a month and above. But there's going to be a lot of filtration in there, and I'm going to direct people to content before we get on the phone call so I can basically scale that trust and they can know who we are before we ever get on the phone call. And the last point I'm going to say here, and I do think that this is the most important one, is proof beats everything. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, at fundwithcredit.com, we have secured $20.7 million in 0% business credit. We've worked with over 100 business owners, and our average business owner that we work with gets around 130K in credit. Some are outliers. We've had people who have gotten 320K, and then we have some people who just get 110K. It just depends on the business. But we have loads and loads and loads of approval screenshots. We have tons of businesses that we've worked with. And personally, if you want to work for fundwithcredit.com, one of the requisites is you need to have been funded by fundwithcredit.com and have at least 6 figures in funding. So just to give you an example, I personally have secured around 500 to 600K in capital. My main funder, which is my brother, he has secured over 6 figures in 0% capital. And my sales guy, who will be coming on shortly and is also a good friend, he has secured over 300,000 in 0% business credit. That is one of our prerequisites, because if you have done the thing you are helping people do, you just have more conviction. You sound more authoritative, you have more experience, and people truthfully believe that you're going to be able to do that for them. And there's going to be no shakiness in your voice, like you're wondering, shoot, am I going to be able to make this happen for them? Well, you can make it happen for them because you've done it before. So if the number one thing I would say in all this is proof beats everything. You can have the best offer on the internet, promise people that you'll get them $1 million in 0% business credit. Don't do that, by the way, because that's not going to happen, at least not quickly at all. But you could promise people the sun, moon, and the stars, but if you just don't have the proof to back it up, it's really hard to push that person through and to get them to trust you. If you just have done it yourself, you've done it for other people, that's the winning formula when it comes to this business, a funding company. Same way with credit repair, really any business. Having proof that you've done it for another business and you've done it for yourself just beats everything, because it's so easy to get someone to believe you if you have already done it yourself. Just to give you an example, before I even started funding companies for a fee, I worked and did this for free for a long time. So I almost went bankrupt years ago. My luxury watch company went belly up and I had to refinance all the debt. I refinanced all that debt with 0% business credit. And then I funded probably 20 companies for free before I ever charged a fee. And the reason I did that is because now I have my personal story, my personal expertise, but then I also have 20 clients that I can leverage. And in the beginning, I would have some people that were like, well, I want to talk to a company that you've worked with before. And I was like, okay. And I got them connected with a company that I had funded. The company I sent them to had gotten tons of funding, had nothing but good things to say about us, and they ended up coming over and joining. And that same exact person has been referring businesses to us for a while. So I'm not going to beat this point any longer. You get what I'm trying to say here. But proof beats everything in business, especially in online business, and 100% a funding company, because you just talk different when you are so confident you're going to be able to do that for someone. So just to recap, the number one thing was we only started working with clients who had a 740 plus credit score. Again, I found that if anyone was below 740, they had indicators that needed to be fixed before they'd be in a position to get funding. So we only worked with people who had a 740 plus. By doing that, we would get people in. We always had them the first approval we still have them the first approval within 24 to 48 hours. And on average, it takes us only 4 hours of work to get someone over 100K in capital. So we are super optimized right now. Number two is only deal with hot lead sources. Now, I'm not saying you have to only do content or you only have to do referrals or in-person events. You can run ads 100%. Like I'm getting ready to run ads again, like I said. The difference is have a warming up process. If you're going to go straight to ads, make some content too, so you have something where people can go and listen to you, hear your expertise, and they can get to know you, the company. And now when they get on the phone, you're not going to have to explain who you are. You're going to be able to just go straight to figuring out how you can get them capital, and they're already pretty much sold on how to do it. I remember Dan Henry years ago told me, he's a very, very popular online entrepreneur. He said, if you are climbing on a phone call, or if you're climbing on a sales call, you've done something wrong with your marketing. And what he meant by that is if someone is getting on the phone and you now have to sell them on what you do and the results you have and that you're a trustworthy person, you've done something wrong with your marketing. It should not be a sales call. When someone books a phone call with you, it should be a closing call. It should be just you going over what it looks like to work with you. They should already have all the information they need on you, your company, your results, everything, prior to even getting on that phone call with you. So that's why I personally like hot lead sources. We are going all in on that this year. I'm going to also try and test some other things as well, but referrals, events, and YouTube, that's where you're going to find me with growing my funding company this year. And thirdly, proof beats everything. If you don't have funding, get yourself some funding first. Just a little bit at least, just so you have those results when you're leaning in and going in to fund other businesses. You can say that you have funded yourself. Additionally, work with a few companies for free. I know it's not fun to work for free. You want to get paid, but nothing is going to pay you more in the long run than having those results in your back pocket, because that's what's initially going to get your business off the ground. So if you do all of these three things, I have no doubt that you can 100% get your business to 100K a month quickly. I didn't get there quickly because I was doing everything wrong, and it took me a long time to figure out what to do right. But that's all I got for you. I hope you enjoyed it. JP out.